Good evening and welcome to this live event. We are streaming tonight across Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube. So thank you for joining us. You'll see the little scroll at the bottom. If you've got any questions for us, please do fire them away. We will come to them a bit later on. So my name's Owen Setter. I'm residential manager at GTH here in Langport. And I'm really privileged tonight to be joined by three of my colleagues, also residential managers of other GTH offices across Somerset, Dorset and Devon. So to start with, Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Katie Cross and I'm the residential manager of the Taunton office.
And sat down there in Devon, who have we got? Jonathan?
Hello, good evening. So I'm Jonathan Gudge and I'm the residential manager at GTH in Yeovil. And I'm sat with my colleague Chloe.
Hello there, I'm Chloe Campbell and I'm the residential manager in South Molton.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. So the purpose of this stream tonight really is to explain to people what we as agents do. A lot of that people will probably already know, and we'll go into that to start with in terms of an idea of what people might expect that we do as agents. But we wanted to explain a little bit about what we do at GTH that might be a little bit different, and what we can do to really help people navigate what is currently a quite unusual property market. So we wanted to explain a little bit about what's going on in terms of the property market and explain what we can do to help you as potential movers navigate that. So I suppose the first place to start is in terms of us as agents and things that people know we do. Primary job, sell houses, and the first thing we want to do is get you the very, very best price for your house. So Katie, what do we do that can help people do that?
So I think, the main job, well, for us as your estate agents, is to put your property in front of the biggest audience possible. Because I think the more people that see houses, obviously the more inquiries we get, the more viewings we get, the more offers we get, which leads to us getting you the best possible price. And I think, that's really, really important with the market the way it is at the moment. Obviously, you'll feature on Rightmove, on themarket.com, obviously our extensive network of offices and obviously our database as well. Another big factor at the moment is our Mayfair office in London. Lots of people relocating, working from home is becoming more and more popular at the moment and more accessible. And that's what we're finding, quite a lot of people coming from the cities to live in the West Country. I think that's probably one of the biggest points for me, getting your property in front of the biggest audience to achieve you the best possible price.
Great. Thanks, Katie. As I kind of alluded to, it's a kind of unusual property market, or maybe it's no longer unusual because it's been like this for some time now. But Chloe, could you maybe kind of give us a bit of an idea about any trends that you're seeing and what you think the market's like at the moment?
Sure. I mean, obviously, as you'd appreciate, there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. We're obviously seeing the devastation in Ukraine. As well as that, energy prices are soaring at the moment, which obviously affects the cost of living. However, with that in mind, we are still seeing the market very, very buoyant in Devon. We've got a lot of buyer registrations. A lot of people are still looking to move to the area. Obviously, they've still got that ability to work from home, and combining that with the rural living and coastal living in our area. We have been seeing low stock levels for some time, really since the COVID pandemic, when, the property market took off. We just couldn't keep up with the speed of it. Everything was selling so quickly. Now, as your usual spring market is coming around, we are seeing valuations increasing and more properties coming to the market. So it's a very promising outlook for us in Devon. Jonathan, how are you finding it in Somerset and Dorset?
So for us in Somerset and Dorset, very similar in many ways. The market is still very much buoyant. There is very strong demand from prospective buyers looking for more of your village, remote, rural properties. I think post-COVID, things have changed quite a lot for people in terms of their outlook and perspective on life. Generally speaking, people want that green space. They want to be able to step out of their front door into the beautiful countryside that we're very fortunately blessed with surrounding us all the time. So buyer demand has very much changed. So people don't want the bigger cities as much anymore. So for us, demand is still very strong in Devon, Dorset and Somerset, clearly. So yeah, but it's just, I think there's still very good good amount of properties coming to the market as well.
On this, we've just had a really good question come in from Claire Cross. She said, "What do you think the market will do over the next 6 months?" And you touched on this, Chloe, in terms of we're approaching a spring market. I don't know if it's the same for the rest of you, but what it feels like I'm starting to see here in Langport is a journey almost back towards normality to an extent, in terms of, you know, starting to see, as you said, that typical spring market. People wanting to put their houses on the market in the spring when they know that our photos will look even lovelier than ever because the flowers are out and all of those sorts of things. So would you guys agree that we're kind of maybe heading towards a bit more normality, a few more properties on the market, a bit more choice for those out there looking to move?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for us, it's that traditional season of, like you say, Owen, that the life is coming out as such, in terms of the flowers are growing, etc. The green leaves are coming back out. The weather's getting nicer, so that definitely gives people a bit of a buzz about moving house during the next 6 months.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. I mean, as we said, you know, hopefully we are heading towards a bit more normality, which will be great, because I think for those that are anxious about the property market, etc., they may feel a little bit more confident because, you know, it's more what they're used to. But obviously, thinking back to what we have been experiencing, it has been, I think, a really difficult market over the course of the last 18 months. You know, something you've had to constantly watch in order to see where it's going. Obviously, we've seen prices go up and things like that. So what I think is really important at the moment is, with any potential client, is that we recognize right at the very, very start what they want to do. So Katie, you know, if you're starting a journey with a new vendor, what's important to you and getting that process going?
I mean, I think firstly, it's really, really important that, you know, we understand the reason for the move and also the timescales, because that's a massive factor at the moment. And that will help us to give you the best advice, especially when you're navigating through this marketplace at the moment, which isn't easy for a lot of people. Obviously, with the market moving so quickly, we would always recommend, you know, launching your property to market before you go out looking for houses, because the market's changing so quickly at the moment. You know, what's on the market today might not be on the market tomorrow. But something that's working really, really well for us at the moment, and actually it's a service that we're offering, which a lot of vendors are taking us up on, is we'll actually come out, we'll value your home, we'll talk to you about the market conditions at the moment, get you fully registered as a buyer. But we'll also get your photos ready, you know, we'll get your brochure done, floor plans, paperwork. So actually, that when you do see something that's, you know, takes your fancy on the market, we can go live with your property straight away. And actually coming into spring, it goes back to what Chloe said, now's the perfect time to do that. Actually, we are hoping that more's going to be coming to market in the spring, summertime. You know, if we can get your, you know, brochure done as a bare minimum, and then actually when you see something you like, it's a click of a button and we're all good to go. That's working really, really well at the moment. And a lot of vendors taking us up on that.
Thanks, Katie. So as we said, it's a complicated market, and we know prices have changed a lot. But Jonathan, I know something that you're really sort of clued up on is making sure that at the very start of our process, a marketing price is correct. And you know, I know people know that prices have increased, and sometimes vendors can suggest maybe we ought to try a bit more. But what are your thoughts, Jonathan, in terms of, you know, the best way to put a property on the market in terms of price?
I think, I mean, you're absolutely correct. It's pricing is so key. It's still a price-sensitive market. Yes, I think we all talk about the market is great and it's very buoyant, etc., but it's still very much a price-sensitive market in our eyes here. You can go so far with price, and I think for us, it's quite key to be getting the best exposure for our clients. So to be seen the most online as well, because ultimately nowadays most people's searches will generally start online. I think long gone are the days, really. We obviously get the odd one or two here and there, but predominantly people will start with their search online for their next move. So they're going to be searching in price bands and price brackets online. For us, I think it's very key and important that I want to be getting my clients the best exposure possible, Therefore, 99% of the time, I will put a property on the market at the most nearest relevant price bracket without taking it too far. Lower down in the scale, it goes in 10s and then gradually creeps up in 25s, 50, 100s, 250s, etc. as you go further up the scale. So, but it's all about getting our client the best exposure, being one of the first few properties that is seen when people are searching.
We've had a big question come in from Catherine on Facebook. What about house prices? Will they continue to rise? Who's got a crystal ball? Jonathan?
I think we'd all love to have a crystal ball, and if we did, we probably wouldn't be sat here today. Very hard to predict. I think a lot will tell in time, really. But I think that will demand drop? Because I think ultimately demand has relevance to do with prices. For me, I don't think the demand is going to drop dramatically for us. So I think prices will continue to rise, perhaps not quite at a sharp increase that we've seen over the last 18 months post-COVID. But I think the demand here in the Southwest has just changed. And I think it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. So I think that my gut feeling is prices will continue, but at a steady pace, not at a sharp increase like we've seen.
I think I'd agree with you, Jonathan. I think, the demand is seemingly pretty consistent. I think, as we've all kind of alluded to, though, the thing that we maybe begin to see change a little bit is the availability of property, or as we quite often just refer to as stock, an increase in stock levels. Katie, are you seeing a bit more property available in Taunton?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it goes back to what, Jonathan was saying. If it's priced correctly, we're selling it, and more often than not, above the guide price. And I think, that's another really important thing for me, guide pricing everything, getting the people through the door, and actually, ideally everybody who'd like to see it, allowing them the opportunity before the seller makes a decision. Because ultimately, we want to achieve the best prices for our sellers.
So getting people through the door, that's the key point, isn't it, to start with? So what ways do we do that? Jonathan's very, well explained, getting the pricing right at the start, making sure that we're hitting the right audience with the pricing. The next thing, I suppose, is making sure that the house looks right and that it's appealing to people. What do you suggest we do in terms of that, Chloe?
When it comes to staging the property, obviously that's vitally important. And when we talk about staging, obviously it's the presentation. So with regards to the photography, I often say to my clients, we use professional photo to obviously make sure it's showcased to the best it can be. Obviously that's people's first impressions. It's the first thing they see, which is why it is so important. And where appropriate, we'll also use drone photography. Obviously, if we want to showcase the location or any land that is included with the property. Something else we use is floor plans. Now, people are more working from home. Obviously, we're seeing a lot more buyers looking for properties that can be used for multi-generational living. So they want to see how they can actually make it work for them. So by doing that, they use the floor plans. As well as that, from regards to looking at it, we can obviously put people through the property. We can do videos if they want to do that, if they're not local and are unable to obviously come and view the property themselves. Now, from combining these, it will create a lot of viewings. Now, what I tend to recommend to my clients is what we call block viewings. Now, block viewings are different to open houses. So open houses tends to be a bit more free-for-all. People don't have select times. Whereas with block viewings, people have select times with the agent. We then show them around and it generates some momentum between the buyers, because as one's leaving, another one's arriving, and that in itself will create a competitiveness. And what it also does as well is, if people are busy with work, you've got pets, you've got children, it manages people's time so they don't have to stress and worry about arranging the house and keeping it clean and tidy for separate viewings and separate days. So I would allocate an afternoons and mornings for the viewings for our clients to make it work for them.
Great, thanks, Chloe. And by doing that, by doing these, these block viewings, getting lots of interest in a intensive period of time. Certainly from my experience here in Langcourt, what that will quite often generate. We did it on Saturday. We had a property in Curry Rival went on the market late last week. We had an intensive block of about 3 hours on Saturday where we had, 6 or 7 viewings. And what that generated was a lot of interest, which turned into offers. Now, what that often means for us here, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys, is that we end up going to what we in agency refer to as being a best and finals scenario. Jonathan, do you want to explain just a little bit very briefly as to what that means?
Yeah, I think I would just like to touch on someone else's point first of all, if I may. First, Richard has very kindly asked a very good question about getting ahead of, I think, seeing properties that are going on Rightmove and already going on as sold. How do we get ahead of that? I just want to make the very key point that it's a case of be registered with us, because quite often we will exclusively launch our properties with our own database initially before then going to the general public online as such, which I think is very key. So, Richard, thank you for your question. I think it's my advice to you would be, in any area that you're specifically looking in, register with all agents, because a lot of agents like us will exclusively send out their properties to their database first of all. In terms of the best and final situation, normally you would obviously conduct your viewings and you start getting offers coming in on the property. So as agents, look, we're there to advise our clients who are selling the property on who is in the best position and also who's prepared to pay the best possible price for the property as well. So we would normally start setting deadlines. We would naturally like to give people enough time so that they are not on the spot and having to give you a decision by 7 o'clock tonight, for example. We would give people a couple of days. This gives people a chance to crunch all of their numbers, work out if it is the right property for them. And therefore, we generally expect the seller to be asking or making the decision, on that particular day. We would set aside a day with the seller where we would say, we're going to go to best and final bids by, let's say, 10 o'clock Friday morning, for example. We would also agree with our client that we want to be making a decision by that particular point, so that we can either let, unfortunately, the underbidders down and then notify the successful party that they are the successful party, to give the chance to set out all the paperwork and go through the formalities and the next steps that we then go through.
And I know that a lot of buyers, or I've seen feedback from a lot of buyers where it can cause some anxiety, can't it, going to this best and final scenario? And a lot of people don't like it. We tend to use it because, from our perspective, we see it as being the fairest way to give everybody their chance. Has anyone got any advice in terms of what you would say to somebody if they're putting in their best bid? I mean, I know what I would tend to say to people is, it doesn't always necessarily. I know we've talked a lot about getting people the best price, but we're talking about what is a difficult market, aren't we? And for me, I always like to tell people that it doesn't always come down to the last £1,000. Somebody's position is really, really important. How long can you wait? Are you in a scenario where you're a cash buyer and you can allow our vendor the time they need to find somewhere? Katie, is there anything else that you would suggest in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. Quite often at the moment we're dealing with houses that have been within the same family for 20, 30, 40 years in some cases. And actually, the most important thing to that vendor is that it goes to another family and, it stays in their family and, whatever it is, they've got children there. But what we've found really recently is actually, if you are making a best and final offer, back it up with some supporting comments. It's where you want to be. Your kids go to school there. You work just around the corner. You've got friends and family in the village, because actually all of those things, they're almost like the emotional comments. They're really important as well. So that would be, my advice when you're going to deals. Obviously, put forward your strongest offer where you'd actually go, do you know what, a penny more and I'd walk away, and some supporting comments. And, we'll obviously forward them on to the seller as well.
And I think what's really important is, this is what we apply to our best and final offers procedure. It applies to every procedure, doesn't it, guys, really, in terms of making sure that we select the best buyer, the best circumstance for our vendors in every instance. If you only get the choice of one buyer, you don't have to go with that buyer just because they're the only offer. You can wait and see what else is out there. It's really important for us that before we agree any sale, we do the same due diligence that we would do on a best and final situation. We want to know that person's position. We want to know how they're funding the purchase. We want to know why they're going to live in the property so that we can explain to our vendors exactly what's going on, exactly what process they can expect moving forward. Something I think we might have mentioned a little bit earlier, and certainly this is the point that Richard raised, I think, really in his question, which you answered really well, Johnny, was, getting ahead of the game, missing out on properties that are already on Rightmove. Now, as you said, Jonathan, sometimes properties will hit Rightmove and we've already agreed a sale because we've got a hot list of people keen and ready and waiting. And that might be causing people some anxiety about coming to the market, because why would you want to sell your house if you don't know where you're going to move to next? Well, we've got some fantastic tools in place at GTH that can allow us to identify what might be your next home. If you say to us, look, Owen, I want to live within 3 miles of Langport. I must live on a property that has got a garden that's somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of an acre, and it must have 2 bedrooms at least. We can really refine down and find those properties for you. And they may well be people that are, thinking of selling soon, but are in a similar position. They might also be a bit anxious about coming to the market. Maybe therefore agreeing a sale to somebody who, is wanting to buy a property in that way might work well for them. So what I'd say to you, Richard, and anyone in a similar scenario, if you're thinking about coming to the market, but your real hold up is you're struggling to find what that next property is going to be, give your local GTH office a call. Get myself or one of my colleagues over to come and see you. We can explain not only what we can do to help get you the very, very best price for your property, but what we can do to help you find the next place that you're going to move to. That's a big, big part of what we do. And one of the huge benefits that we've got working for GTH and having the network of offices that we do across the Southwest. I don't know how many miles apart we're sat this evening, but we're at almost opposite ends of the patch, guys, aren't we?
Very much so. Very much so. I think touching on Owen's point, though, again, it's finding the right buyer, because it's not all about every last penny. It isn't. It is about the right buyer. Casey's comments, finding the person that's got a connection to the area, etc. All of those sorts of finer points, they do matter to our clients at the end of the day. So it is finding the right buyer. We would hate to put someone in a position where they're overstretching on a best and final situation that makes them financially uncomfortable at the end of the day. There's no point doing that. I think that's just the point that I would like to make on that, really.
Right. Well, I think that's pretty much everything that we wanted to touch base on in terms of, in terms of what we prepared for tonight. But certainly we've got some time to take some more questions. So do keep firing away in the comments if you've got a question. And if we run out of time tonight, still fire over a question. If you're watching this, on replay later on, send some more questions. We'll get back to you in whatever way we can. But we've got a great question here from Rachel on Facebook. She says, how can I choose an agent who's right for me and what I want to do? And I think, Katie, this comes back, doesn't it, to what we said a little bit earlier in terms of really understanding the client and what they want to do in the first instance.
Yeah, absolutely. The timescales for the move, and what your onward plan is. The more honest you can be with us, the best advice we can give to you. And ultimately, we'll tailorize our package for each individual vendor. And I think that's something, really, really important that we can offer. No, not every vendor is the same. Every vendor is different. And that's what we can do. We can accommodate every single seller. I
think that's really important, isn't it, for all of us, that, at the end of the day, our primary role is customer servants to our clients, isn't it? And to make sure that we provide the service that our clients want and expect of us, and it's to meet those goals and expectations. So I think that's all the questions that we've got at the moment. So as I say, do fire over some more, in the comments later on if you're watching this video back at a later time. And myself or any of us here tonight will do what we can to come back to you as quickly as possible with an answer. Thank you for joining us on this live event tonight. I think we're back in about a month's time with something else. So do join us then again. So just around the room, thank you, Chloe and Jonathan.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We look forward to answering any questions, should you have any after today's live video. Thank you.
Katie, thanks for making the journey to Langport. Anything else, guys, you wanted to say before we sign off?
No.
All good from me.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.